Is it tartan?
Spoiled tartan.
Is it tartan?
Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm saying hello in the YouTube chat. Just letting you know that we will be answering questions live there. I'll type that in case people miss that message. And let me pop out the YouTube chat so I can see it. Awesome. All right, so we have a great show today because Cora 7 is in beta testing right now. And if you have Cora and you want to be a beta tester, just make sure you join the Cora Skype group. You do that by pressing the Skype button in Cora and just follow the instructions on the page, and that'll get you into the group. And then just scroll back in the chat history to yesterday's install links. And so far in the beta testing, I've been releasing updates daily with bug fixes. So trying to get to a stable build so we can do the Cora 7 launch. And there's a lot of cool features in there. There's a lot of new data, a lot of new information, and we're discovering stuff about SEO left and right. And it's just really, really cool. So what a lot of people don't know is that Cora 7 has a local SEO capability now. It has measures over 1,000 factors in your business profile for map search. And so we're getting our first looks at Cora style analysis of those 1,000+ local factors. And there's new tricks. Like one of the things that we do in Cora now is we will actually look at individual keyword variations and see how those perform in specific zones of the page. There's just a lot new. So Lee, what are your thoughts of the types of information you're seeing in Cora 7?
Well, from a data standpoint, it's a gold mine. The first thing, I think the previous version of Cora had a little over 2,000 factors, hard coded in. Now you have factor detection capabilities, which means that Cora is reading the pages, and it's instead of just looking for specific things, it's seeing what's there and cataloging it and correlating it, which means that there's a lot more things happening now than there used to be. Then with the last minute edition of local, you picked up over 1,000 factors there. So I think some congratulations are in order, because I think the number of factors you reported this morning at Cora has gone over 5,000 factors now and climbing.
Yeah, and climbing.
So from a status standpoint, you've got a lot of new, and it's not just, they're not BS factors. There are things that are going on, on the page, and the local stuff nobody else has out there in this way. The ability to look at factors that are both on the Google Business Profile and on the website tied to the Google Business Profile. That is going to be something that I'll be diving into in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I'm like a kid in a candy store with this data. I find myself getting mad that I have to stop and fix bugs because I just want to dive in and make discoveries. So I thought with today, we would look at some of the data, the initial data. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this stuff is new. There are still, it's in beta. There are still bug issues. We might encounter issues. So take it all with a grain of salt. But I thought we would look it's some of the things I'm finding. Let me go ahead and maximize the slide. All right. So this first one, I was searching for the keyword sterling silver amethyst bracelet. So a space I understand, unbranded ecom. And so I was kind of looking at it thinking, well, I wonder what is going on if I look at each of the component words of this multiple word search term. Is Google gonna start picking favorites? Do certain keyword variations within this matter more than other keyword variations? And I didn't know what to expect in the analysis. I expected there would be something, but I didn't know what to predict it would be. And what I found was actually kind of shocking to me, in that I was seeing what appears to be favoritism of the plural form over the singular on bracelet. And I was seeing clear favoritism towards amethyst. And so what we have here in the best of both and the best of both by page columns, these are the correlation coefficients. So how strongly does it correlate with rank position in Google? And the best of both by page ones are just really strong. So across the top results by the average factor measurement by page, these things are correlating really strong in the green, and they're not correlating as you move into the red. So that's the color coding. And then we have the usage column here, because as Lee likes to point out regularly, if the usage is high enough, the correlation could be 0, but it could still be a cost of entry for the keyword. And so, a good example of that here is the word bracelet. It's not correlating, and it has extremely high usage rate. So the problem is, if everybody does it, it won't correlate. It's just a cost of entry. Is that right, Lee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's probably what this 94% usage rate is, with correlation coefficients near 0, which mean, the order of the rankings for this particular entry aren't in a particular order.
Yeah, in this particular case, you can have people from top to bottom using it similarly. And then, your correlation would be flat near 0. But up at the top, you can see for, I think it's the 5th factor variation bracelets in the HTML tag, that's 90% are using it. But the people at the top are using it a lot more than the people at the bottom, even though most people are using that particular factor. So it does correlate because it's not being used uniformly from top to bottom.
Yeah, exactly. And so this was my first look at the data, and I was like, wow. So I added 2 columns to the data. I broke out the just the word by itself from the factor name, and the zone by itself from the factor name, because I wanted to then do pivot tables and see if I could see the bias towards these areas. And so I did that, and there were favored variations. And when you look at the average best of both by page correlation, or no, wait, is this just the regular? This is just the regular best of both. Okay, it's not by page, just best of both. You can see that there's clear favoritism for amethyst and bracelet and sterling, and then it starts to fall off quickly. So I thought that was interesting. Not all the variations are treated equally. And this bangle one, oftentimes that looks like it might be harmful. So I'm not sure how to interpret that Google would offer up a variation that's potentially damaging if you use it. What do you think of that notion, Lee?
This is one where, the correlation tells us there's potentially a relationship there. We're just not sure how to interpret it, because and we talked about this, one of the things is, a bangle is a synonym for a bracelet. And if everybody, towards the top is using bracelet, and then, towards the bottom, they start to allow some of the synonyms like bangle in, that may be an indicator, not that bangle is damaging, but that it's a second tier, a second tier synonym.
So B list.
Yeah, it's a B list, word, and it only appears at the bottom, which makes it look like it has a negative correlation. So we don't know. Now, the only thing you could do with something like that is test it. Test having pages with just bangle, pages with just bracelet, pages with both, because you might find that it's even more clear if you utilize both of them.
Yeah, because it makes me think that, for the search term, synonyms are not necessarily treated equally.
Right.
And that's kind of new information, that synonyms could be treated lesser.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this particular term, I can understand some of the data that I'm seeing here from just from a logical processing standpoint. You start with the broad category would be bracelet. And within that, you would have a silver bracelet. So that would be, sort of a subtopic. But an amethyst silver bracelet is very, very specific. So amethyst is, the primary important word for giving me the user what it is that I'm looking for. So I would think, it makes sense to me that amethyst would be, the stronger term, because otherwise you're just looking at silver bracelets. And I'm like, well, I don't want a silver bracelet. I want an amethyst silver bracelet. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, you may be having some data which gives us some insight into how Google parses out a multi-word, phrase to determine what's relevant and what isn't.
Yeah. And this is an example of data that's new in Cora 7. I'll just point out that these variation factors, are not shared in the Cora shared data. That violates my policy of grabbing keywords without permission, which we don't do. So none of these variation factors get logged on the server. So if you're wondering about that, we do not log these factors. Those stay local to your own computer and reports.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to just go back with, so that people understand, this is brand new data, and we don't have any idea what it means. But right now, looking at new data like this, we can formulate questions that we can go test and analyze to determine how other parts of the algorithm work. So I'm going to double up on your take all of this with a grain of salt.
Yeah. What this is that this is a clue that there might be something worth testing here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on all this green and red and the favored variations, is that, wow, there's room to test something here. Now, we don't know a best practice from just looking at something that's evidence that there's something test worthy. I wouldn't build a best practice on that alone. So yeah, this is an indication that there's probably something to learn, and we haven't learned it yet. All right. So another thing that's in Cora 7 is the Wapalizer API is back. When we initially had it, their database wasn't as robust, so it wasn't coming back with much for most websites. So maybe a handful of the top websites, they would have technology stack information for, and then the most of the search results were goose eggs as far as them knowing anything. And that's not the case anymore. Their database is now pretty robust. So I've enabled the Wappleizer API in Cora 7, and it's showing lots of cool things. So here I'm looking at technology components on the websites, and I'm sorting it by usage rate because I want to see if the usage rates make sense to me. And so jQuery, cart functionality, Google Analytics, Tag Manager, Facebook Pixel. These are all things I would expect to be the most frequently used. And so Cloudflare is another one, Bootstrap, Microsoft Ads, Google Font. So all of this looks right on point for usage rate for me. What do you think of this first glance, Lee?
I think it's cool because it raises the question, like when I'm looking at the best of both by page, the number 2 uses cart functionality, it has a huge correlation, pretty damn good usage rate. Makes me wonder if sterling silver amethyst bracelet is just, sort of an e-commerce sort of keyword. And my little blog article would have a tough time in this particular SERP.
Yeah. Like one way of utilizing this is, if you're thinking, well, geez, maybe I want to do an online store, you could look in the niche and find the technologies that are helping people function the best. So it's like, okay, I know I could do a jQuery theme, and I'll probably need a good cart, and looks like it's relatively safe to use analytics and tag manager without impacting your rankings. And the Facebook pixel looks smart too. Look at that, a 0.72. And that's smart because you want to diversify your marketing channels in online retail. So that social marketing is a key point. So that's a really good clue that you don't want to be SEO only in online retail right there. Let's see, Cloudflare is an interesting one, high usage rate, but it doesn't necessarily help you. So maybe that's optional. I know there's a lot of good features in there, but it doesn't seem to drive you up. So maybe if you need the security features, it makes all the sense in the world.
The one that stands out to me is the most read one, Font Awesome. What is that?
That is kind of like Google Fonts, I think. It's another way of getting cool web fonts.
Yeah, but you have 20, nearly it's 21% of the SERP is using it, and they all rank at the bottom. So I'm like, that's a curiosity. I'd want to go see what those.
Well, these the problem with fonts is they have to be highly optimized on the CDN. They're a binary download. And so depending upon how it's implemented, this could be dragging your page speed down. They could be overly bloated fonts.
Right.
Yeah, who knows the reason? But yeah, apparently the Google one, it doesn't help you rank either. It doesn't have any correlation, but at least it doesn't appear to be hurting you.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect the Google fonts to be sort of generic. Everybody's got it, here and there, and it's not really a ranking thing. But the sites with Font Awesome, and I'm not saying it's because they use Font Awesome, but the sites that use Font Awesome, there's a bunch of them, and those correlations are putting them at the very bottom. So there's something going on with those sites that may or may not be related to this. That's why I was curious.
Yeah, it could be that this is older technology too. And that would generally make these older websites that probably haven't been updated. So there's a cross-pollination of factors possibly.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's something we'd want to look into. All right. So I resort the data instead of by usage by the top performers on best of both by page, because I saw that too in those best of both by page. I was like, what are we going to see here? And all of a sudden, it just loaded up with enterprise services. And I was looking at these going, holy cow, the only businesses that can afford a lot of these services are going to be high authority, big online retailers. Like, you're not going to have your mom and pop stores using these as part of their technology stack, most likely. And so I looked at this and said, well, wow, enterprise services predict authority sites. That's kind of my takeaway. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I'm looking at okay, these are Amazon indicators. That's really what you got here. It's a list of those, as you said, those authority sites, those big ones that use, a lot of these things here. That's why the usage rates are low.
Yeah, just tiny.
So you're just talking about the big dogs, and here's the stack that they use. So this is one of those things where they're not ranking because they use these technologies. They rank because they're big dogs, and these technologies correlate because they use bigger sites that rank better.
Only big dogs can afford them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. But when when I was doing SEO for a page rank 8, I would have loved this list because I could run down these services and compare them to what we're doing and see if any of them made sense for the corporation. So if you are looking to do, business development in terms of, what services you're using, this might be a really cool list to look at.
Right.
So yeah, if you're in an enterprise seat and you might consider looking at what your services are, this is a really unique way to find a what's hot list. All right, so let me see, what did I do here? Let me go back one. Forgot what I did. Okay, so I lied before. This one was best of both. So across all 100. This one is best of both by page, and it's different. It's got some of the enterprise services, but it also has some other things that enterprises do, like using Java. Not a lot of stores will do custom development. So that's interesting, right? That right there is implying that bigger websites are doing load-bearing custom stores, not off the shelf. So that's an interesting thing. And, people that are at the lower end of online retail would not build a custom store most of the time. They'd use Shopify or something else. So that I find interesting. But yeah, not a lot in this one. Any thoughts on this one?
No, I think you've covered this one.
All right, so here we're looking at maps data. So I took the overview sheet and I eliminated everything that isn't a maps factor. So this is only the maps factors from the overview sheet, and the correlations and this isn't from the overview sheet. It's from the map shared data. This is top factors data. So this is low sample rate because the software is just new. There's not a lot in the shared data. These are the top correlating maps factors with a very low sample rate.
Probably 50 of those samples are DUI Lawyer Los Angeles, just to be
Yeah, I think there's a few hundred different keywords in this data. Not a ton though.
Yeah.
Not enough to want to change what your business does, but it's a first look at shared data for maps factors. So near the top, which I've seen in a lot of reports, is rating, review count, and photo count. That's like the trifecta. So in local SEO, we've all heard that, keyword and the business name and proximity, and, that's 99%. I'm not so sure that old school local SEO thinking is correct. I see this triple up like quite commonly near the top and keywords I run, where rating, review count, and photo count is important. I don't see it in all keywords, and it makes me wonder if Google is going, industry by industry and flipping, what switches and what factors are important for searches in that industry. So, for example, if you search for, dinner restaurants, it's going to put importance on the dinner offering switch. It's going to probably put importance on the price field. It's probably going to put importance on the rating and review count. And it's probably going to put importance on the hours being, open, those types of things. And I've also seen a number of things like the wheelchair accessibility, just like across the board, having strong importance. So if your business can accommodate things like a wheelchair accessible entrance and you're not specifying that in your profile, I think there's an early indication that for a lot of search terms that stuff like that could be important. Not seeing it in this data, but I've seen it in specific keyword reports. And then these 1 through 5, those are the number of star ratings at that amount. So having that data present. And then, of course, having your hours, always important. So what's your first thought of the maps data, Lee?
Yeah, there's two that I have. One is looking at like the standard reviews, ratings, photo. Having played around with analysis with some of this stuff, I'll go back to something that I remember Terry Power saying. A lot of people think, okay, you get reviews and your rankings improve, but if you're ranked at the top, you're going to get more clicks, you're going to get more customers, and you're going to get more reviews as a result. So we don't know whether the review count, for example, is cause or effect of rankings, or a little bit of both.
Would photo count fall prey to that too? Because you tend to see the three together.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, rating and review count tend to, go sort of that way. Photo count, I have not really seen, but it's also that one, the correlation is different than the other two. So if you're looking at, and again, it's very early data. The other thing that I'm looking at here is, once we have the Cora 7 stable, I'm going to run, a few hundred of the local searches so that we can have a better population of data in here to get the shared data, because that is the critical piece. We need to get up to a critical mass so that we can start to analyze it, because I want to see, once we have hundreds of reports in there, what it is that sort of migrates to the top and consistently shows across, the samples. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this. It's like, I'm like a week before Christmas. I have to wait, 7 days to get my presents because it's going to take a little while to get the data up to where I need it to be.
Yeah, and we have a question. Do you have a factor diversity for local analysis yet? And yes, that's in there. It's called number of maps factors used, and it's already doing pretty well. You can see here it's got a significant correlation even with the small sample set.
Yep.
So it looks like factor diversity in your business profiles is an important thing. And so that's a large part of what's fueling me to believe that all these small profile settings, they could probably add up to something important. And, just thinking about it, with some of the types of things that are out there, knowing that you accept business or debit cards, knowing that you have restrooms available, knowing that you have a parking lot, all those little things, knowing that you have a drive-through. People are on the interstate and, they will actually search for a Starbucks with a drive-through because not all Starbucks have them. So all these switches could come into play depending upon the keywords, especially if the keywords can match a switch that you have. And so in those ways, you want to have that completeness of data. So it kind of reminds me of Amazon optimization, where your completeness of your product info can impact the amount of sales you get, same type of thing. And so, yeah, I'd say the early look at the data is suggestive that you don't want to skip details that you have. And, it's hard to know all of them. So it's cool to see a report that, you can look at and go, for my keyword, oh yeah, I have those too. I need to go figure out how to turn them on. All right, so same data, top maps factors, but sorted by correlation by page. So these are the strongest correlating in a tiny sample size. So take it with a grain of salt.
Oh, that's beautiful. That just means that SEOs have been checking up on themselves. That's what that maps type internet marketing service tells me.
Yeah, it's a bunch of like test keywords, I guess. So types and subtypes do matter. So the fact that types correlate, a negative 0.92 means nailing the right type for the search is going to be important. So definitely make sure that you don't get your primary type and your subtypes wrong. So let's see, like here's one, switch comfort food enabled. That's an interesting one. It has a really strong correlation, but people who are looking for that, that's an interesting switch if you're dealing with a restaurant.
You're not saying I should do that with my plumber though, right?
Yeah, no, it needs to make sense with how people search, and there's probably some aspect of how people search that would trigger this to correlate.
Right.
Like takeout enabled and delivery enabled. Here's one, my favorite, map switch beer enabled. So, there you go. Those things, they can matter if you offer them, but you haven't enabled them in your profile, you might be missing out. Curbside pickup enabled. So these all smack of how people are searching. Like they want something particular, so they search in a way where it becomes a factor. And we've seen that before in map search. Especially in earlier versions last year, you would type in best pizza and it would take best out of your keywords and it would turn it into a ratings search. So it would turn the sort order based on average rating and remove best as a keyword and do a search for pizza. So we saw earlier incarnations of local taking out specific keywords and turning them into sorts and filters. Now they hide that more today, so it's harder to see, but I think we're still seeing it in the data. And so that's what I suspect is happening. And that's why I think that all of these, extra fields in your business profile can be very powerful, is because keywords are activating them as factors. That's my theory, and the data, seeing correlations like this, the data kind of suggests it might be going that way. But again, super small sample size. So we'll see if it holds with more data and analysis. Any thoughts on what you're seeing here, Lee?
No, I mean it's interesting, but it's also early because if you're looking at maps, Thai restaurant, is a huge correlating thing. I'm worried about the way that people might interpret some of this data until we get a large enough data set that the sort order will take care of itself at that point based on the usage rates, etc.
Yep. And like this one here, map switch dinner enabled. Like if you go in and search for dinner, and it's gonna figure out that you want restaurants, you want ones that are open for dinner, you probably want ones that serve dinner. And so a switch like this, if you don't have it activated for your restaurant, that could be impactful to the amount and types of searches you appear in. And so do we know that with certainty? Not yet, but I do strongly suspect that there's some capability in map search I've seen evidence in the past, and I'm seeing data that's suggestive now. So I'm gonna lean towards, I think all these little tiny settings add up to something important.
Well, I think what's cool now is that if I ran a search for Thai restaurant near me, that these little switches and stuff like that, they're going to pop up, they're going to correlate on my individual report, less so than the shared data. And I'm going to go, man, do I have my beer switch flipped? Do I have my takeout switch on? Do I have my dinner switch on? Those sort of attributes that you want in there. It's going to tell me what my competitors are doing and potentially what I'm missing out on.
Yep. Exactly. And so it's definitely fascinating data to look at so far.
So you have also the first data-based maps completeness profile audit.
Yeah, and so far we can see what your competitors have and what you're lacking. And so in the Cora report, it'll tell you need one of these and one of those, and all that shows up in the roadmap of flip these switches.
Right.
All right, so now I'm looking at just the switches, so not all of the value settings, just the Booleans. They're either on or they're off, and just the enabled ones. And looks like I'm sorting by the most common ones. So most common switches being used. So appointment, women owned, verified, wheelchair accessible entrance, so very common one. Safe spaces, accessibility, payment options.
What's interesting is that the ones that start to reach, significance are alcohol enabled, beer enabled, and buys used good enabled.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, not even pawn shops, maybe.
Uh,
Not sure what that's for.
I don't know.
Oh, it could be sporting stores as well.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I guess there's a number of business types. So various antique stores could be a lot in that. Um,
But beer enabled is looking more and more like a very strong local ranking factor, which I love.
yeah. If you're looking for an inside joke meme for a local SEO T-shirt, I think beer enabled is your meme. All right, so let's see. Here, same list, looking at the switches again, but correlation by page. So these are the ones that appear to influence rankings the most. Very small sample size, so big grain of salt. Alcohol enabled, beer enabled, good for kids enabled. That makes sense. Takeout enabled, curbside pickup, dinner enabled.
Yeah, these are all like restaurant ones that are.
Well, appointments, so that would be salons and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Um, this one's interesting, casual, so not formal uh, environment. Um,
And I'm guessing the identifies as Asian owned just because there was a lot of searches for Asian restaurants. Or
oh yeah, like
salons
Thai
could
food.
also be there. Yeah.
Wi-Fi, that's an interesting switch. Oops, what did I do there? So that's the one. All right. So let's see. Wine accessibility. Yeah, so there's quite a bit here. I'm going to be very interested to see how this evolves as we approach a critical mass of data.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting. Like, I bet if I looked at this list today, it would be somewhat different because we probably have like 5 times as many searches today as we did the other day when I pulled this. So yeah, but yeah, starting to when I see correlations, like this, it makes me think that there's something going on with these.
Right.
And so if that continues as the data sample size goes up, then all of these start to matter more, in my opinion. And so this notion that local SEO is just the keyword in your business name and proximity, I think we can start taking shots at that as long as these trends hold up with more sample size. Let's see. We have a few questions here. Any thoughts on what moved the needle in this new core update? It's still rolling out, so I wouldn't call it over yet. And oftentimes they make changes and do rollbacks. So if you fell down or went up, it may not be permanent yet, and you may see a lot of volatility. Normally we have to wait until like a week or so after everything returns back to a normal baseline. Then we declare it over. Then we compare reports from before and after the update and try to tease out clues. And one of the main reasons you don't want to act too soon, like if you started repairing your SEO right now while it's still rolling out, that's kind of like trying to repair the building while the earthquake is still happening. You generally want to wait until after the volatility event before assessing the damage and making a plan. And so you could make things worse. You could do unnecessary work. In times of Google update, the things you want to do is you want to stop working on your most important pages in general and start working on new content or pages that have nothing to lose because they don't rank or don't perform. It's updates are a great time to get ahead in those areas so you can prioritize, expanding into new keywords and making pages perform that otherwise you wouldn't be able to prioritize. So in general, I try to send people down that path while the update's going on. Focus on things that can't do any harm. So new pages or pages with nothing to lose. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think over time I've gotten to the period as soon as Google update starts to happen, whether I'm moving or not. I just take an attitude of don't care until you see the final outcome. And I know that things bounce up, and and you're like, oh, I'm so happy, and then it returns to baseline. And things bounce down. It's like, oh God, what happened here? What did I do? And then it returns to a baseline. So it's better just to wait till it's all done, wait till the earthquake is over, then assess whether anything has actually happened.
Yeah, yeah. And, a common thing that happens is SEOs get super excited. So they see during a rollout that their ranking went up to some awesome number and they go running to their client. Look how awesome I am. Look what I did for you. I have saved you. You are saved. And then a week later, it returns to that baseline. And then you're not feeling so good with that client. And
Right.
so you gotta be careful during updates because people do silly things.
And it is also hard if you have clients going, oh my God, yesterday we were at number 8, and today we're at 31. What did you do? That's
Yeah,
also a very hard position to be in. And it's hard to tell them, hey, just wait a month, because they're thinking, my call volume is down, or things like that. So, I mean, it's a tough position to be in.
yeah, yeah. And remember, it's a four-party problem. So it's your business and what you've built. It's my SEO advice and changes. It's our competitors' moves to try to beat us. And it's Google's updates that change the rules of the game. So, any one of those four parties can disrupt the whole thing. And so you gotta keep in mind as an SEO that you can't make promises that no competitor will ever outmaneuver you. You can't make promises that Google won't rewrite the rules of the game. And so you just gotta set the expectation that we can react to changes, but we can't control the future. And so, people just have to understand that, and that once the dust settles from an update, then we can make a plan to respond to the change of that update. But, like I said before, you don't start fixing the building while the earthquake is still happening. So you gotta wait for it to end first. Let's see. Please set up Cora for YouTube as well. Well, we can start doing research for that, strangely enough. There's a feature in Cora 7 called custom search, where you can specify a custom result set in the settings. And then you can use a keyword with the custom search engine selected, and it'll pull your custom result set. Then you can track a URL and you can run the Cora analysis on it from there. It's normal. And that lets you do interesting things. It lets you take YouTube results. It lets you take Amazon shopping results. It lets you take, this search or that search results and do a high effort analysis. You wouldn't do it 1,000 times, but if you're looking to see, is there something there? Is there something fundamental about this? You can actually do that in Cora 7. Lee, are you planning on using custom search at all?
Oh, absolutely. But I like to caution people about that because what you've built is a plow. It's a tool that's you're going to go take some work and some effort to figure out some things you can do with it. But at a minimum, it might be interesting to take like a set of YouTube results, scrape them off of YouTube, plug them into Cora, and see what it comes back with. Now, it's not pulling YouTube factors per se, but see if there's anything there that shows up in the data. It's always worth having Cora take a look at some stuff. And you just take a second, Ted, and talk about you threw some Amazon shopping results in there and what was popping out of that. Just as an example.
Well, I don't have the data at the top of my memory, but I remember that it was a different lineup than what you would typically see in like a Google search. So, there's a lot more importance on different zones of the page, a lot of relevancy factors, keyword usage factors in specific areas of the page. It was a different result set. It kind of looked more Bing-like to me, in my opinion, but I only did one keyword, so my sample size was very low. And it's
like keyword stuffing might be a thing over on Amazon.
Yeah. And of course, Amazon is going to look at sales, product sales, and they're going to promote things that sell well, duh. But outside of that, like, how can you, if you have a product that doesn't sell many units, how can you be the king of the products that don't sell many units? There are ways to make those incremental gains. And so, it's a difficult one to do because Amazon pages are huge. So when you try to play that game in Cora, you do have to reconfigure the software. There are some general limit settings that you need to increase the limits. It's an extremely slow report to analyze the full pages on Amazon. So out of the box, this feature is definitely advanced because A, you've got to parse results and put them in. B, you have to know how to reconfigure Cora to be able to process them well and completely. So, if that's something you're going to do, maybe ping me on Skype and, we can look at it together if you run into trouble. Because it might be a bit more advanced than just like the average stuff people do. Let's see. Is there a public address factor for maps? I haven't looked for that yet. I've seen address and full address and street address. I know those three are in there. I haven't seen one labeled public address yet, but I will take a look. If it's coming through in the API, we ought to be able to surface that. I just haven't seen it offhand. Let's see. So yeah, I think that's all the questions. Terry says, don't forget the inclusion of the variations tool. Well, there's the inclusion of the volatility tool, So if you've seen the volatility software, that comes bundled as in free with Cora 7. So most people have been paying for that. So if you have Cora and the volatility tool, with Cora 7, you can cancel your volatility tool subscription and save that money because you get that bundled in now. And there is a new variations report, but we'll save that for another day. There's a lot more in Cora that we haven't shown you, and this is just a first look at some of the data and things that are getting us to, peak our eyebrows going, what's that?
Ted, if I wanted to get Cora, where would I get it?
Right now it's not out, it's in closed beta. So if you go to SEOtoollab.com, you can buy Cora, but it'll be the Cora 6.9. Then you would have to join the Skype group, and you do that by clicking the Skype button in Cora, and it'll take you to the join page. And then from there, you can see the beta download links in the chat group. And while the beta is going on, I'm pushing out new updates about daily with fixes and changes. So just note that Cora 7 isn't perfect yet. We're not to our stable build. We're still doing our beta testing. Let's see, what else is there? Oh, and the other important thing is that the pricing is going to change on Cora. It's not going to change for, several weeks yet. So at least 4 weeks. It might take 6. We'll see. It's going to change from a base price of $250 a month to a base price of $350 a month, but that's for new subscriptions. Existing subscriptions will keep their price as long as they keep their subscription active. So if you want to get in at the lower price, you only have a few weeks left to do it. So that's the warning there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in Cora 7. It is the biggest update to Cora I have ever done. So, I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface on everything that's in there. So check it out. We'll show you more data in the coming weeks as we discover new exciting things. We will definitely share it. You can see the emergence of new Cora 7 factors in the topseofactors.com website. So if you want to see what's starting to hit the charts and you're not a Cora customer, you can see those charts at topseofactors.com. All right. With that, everyone, we'll see you next week. Thank you again.